I'm Mr. MegaManFan. This is the PC Engine Files, and today we're looking at Kaizou Choujin Shubibinman. Please don't ask me to say that twice, I don't think I can. Now, this series has a somewhat convoluted history because it's a franchise with 4 games in it created by Messiah, but only one of those 4 entries was officially localized for the United States, and it's called Shockman. So if you know that TurboGrafx game, it's actually the second game in the series. The one we're looking at today is the first. And they changed up some things from the first to the second game. They made it a little more like Mega Man, which is why Shockman is often called the Mega Man of the TurboGrafx. But I think that's kind of doing it a disservice, and I think it's also doing this franchise a disservice. So let's talk about the first entry in the series. As you can see, you have your choice of 2 protagonists, one named Tasuke and one named Cupico, and you can play individually or 2 players together if you have 2 controllers. So I can't attest to the 2-player action, but in 1-player mode, it's a side-scrolling platformer where you hit enemies with a sword, collect various items that they drop, such as power-ups and what I'm assuming is yen, because that looks like it's a symbol for money up at the top. And sometimes they even drop bombs, which, when you collect them, destroy all the enemies on the screen. I haven't entirely figured out all of the power-ups yet, but I'm kind of getting the hang of it as I go along, as I'm playing it for today's video. I'm also kind of getting the hang of the platforming jumps, because your character goes forward very slowly, so your jumps have to be very precise. You have to get right to the edge of a platform, jump at just the right time to catch a floating platform, or jump all the way at the edge of one platform to just barely reach the next platform. It's not super forgiving. It reminds me a lot, and this will probably come across as a negative comparison, to Castlevania The Adventure on Game Boy. That's how slow your jumps are. Now, with that said, I don't hate this game, nor do I hate Castlevania The Adventure. I'm just trying to give you a point of reference, and if you don't like a platformer where your jumps are that slow and that finicky, that may be a detriment to your enjoyment of the game, but it doesn't ruin it for me. It just means you have to take your time and be precise. One of the positives is that there are branching paths in this game, so you don't have to play it in any specific order. You can choose your way of progression through the map, and even if you can't read Japanese, it's pretty easy to figure out that you move the cursor to where you want to go and hit the button, and that takes you to that stage. Each stage has a boss at the end, and according to several reviews I've read, they increase in difficulty as you go along. But as you saw a bit earlier in this playthrough, I basically stood in front of the boss and mashed my sword repeatedly until it died. Even if you take a couple hits, you're gonna hit it more and do more damage than it's gonna hit you, so that seems to not be a problem. The only problem is that your life carries over from one stage to the next. It doesn't reset between levels, so if you take too many hits, you're going into the next stage almost completely depowered. So be warned, if you want to try the button mashing strategy, it can work, but it could also backfire on you tremendously. And since I can't speak to the later bosses being more powerful, it's probably true based on the reviews I've seen at places like Video Game Den, so that would be a huge disadvantage if you wanted to try the button mashing strategy. Incidentally, although this franchise looks like it might be based on a manga or anime, to my knowledge it's not. It was Messiah trying to create their own intellectual property that they could license out over multiple games and possibly even get spun off into movies or anime. I don't know that it ever achieved that level of success, but then again, there are 4 games in the series, so it achieved some level of success. And I would say this game got renewed attention, as did the entire franchise, because of a recent re-release of Kaizou Choujin Shubibinman 4, or if you want to call it Kaizou Choujin Shubibinman 0, that's the name it was released on Satellaview in Japan. Satellaview? Yeah, the Super Famicom satellite expansion add-on that you could get streamed games from a satellite service to your Super Famicom. And this game was originally supposed to be released in 1994 and got shelved for who knows what reason, showed up on the Satellaview a few years later, and then almost completely disappeared into obscurity until in the 2010s, the rights to it were picked up and it was re-released in a physical form for the first time ever as a Super Famicom cartridge. And if you have a Super Nintendo where you've taken off the Region Protect tabs, you can play that cartridge in your Super Nintendo, or you can try it in emulation, as you can try this game in emulation as well. But be warned, if you want a physical copy, because this series picked up some notoriety with that Super Famicom re-release, the older games are getting more expensive now as well. I've seen a set of the first 3 games for PC Engine going for $150. Shockman Complete in Box, I believe, goes for $50 to $80, maybe more as of the recording of this video. So, not the cheapest title you can get for PC Engine. And this one, this first entry alone, could set you back $50 loose. So, buyer beware, you might want to try before you buy. But it's definitely a fun game if you can get around the fact that there's a bit of a slow jumping action to it, and you have to get, how do I want to say it? Not trying to make a Mega Man pun, but you have to get equipped. You have to get in the frame of mind of these jumps and the timing that it takes to do them. And once you get that down, you can get to these boss battles and make progression through the game. So there's a learning curve here, but it's not insurmountable. There's a little bit of a language barrier, but it's not insurmountable. I'm probably missing some things, but I'm also enjoying it because it's an easy to grasp side-scrolling action platforming game with 2 cutesy cyborg kids who just want to save the world from evil. And if that draws comparisons to Mega Man, well, I guess it would, because rock and roll are Dr. Light's children who want to save the world from evil. So call them cyborgs, call them robots, whatever they are, they just want to go out and battle against ne'er-do-wells everywhere. And I suppose the fact that Dr. Wily resides in a fortress that looks like a skull, and the boss of this first game is called Dark Skull, that's just drawing even more incentive to make the comparison. But it wasn't until Shockman that they did away with the sword and gave you a buster weapon of sorts that you could fire at the enemies. So at that point, it was inevitable that the franchises would be compared, but I prefer to think of them as 2 unique, completely different things, especially considering that I find the platforming a lot easier in the Mega Man series of games. It just seems perfectly attenuated to my play style, and this, it's difficult, but it's doable. That's my review of Kaizou Choujin Shubibinman. I recommend this game. I don't recommend paying high prices for it, but I do recommend trying it because it is a good experience on a PC Engine or an emulator. Thanks for watching.